There are four primary ways to issue equity in startups. They are founder stock, restricted stock, RSUs, or restricted stock units, and options. Options are the last one we will deal with, which is also the topic of this course. Firstly, founder stock. This is the stock that you, founders, issue to themselves when they form the company. It can also include stock issued to early team members, those first few people who join you when you've got nothing but an idea. Founder stock will typically be common stock and it will be owned by the founders, subject to vesting provisions. Founder stock has special vesting provisions among the founders so that one or more of them doesn't leave early and keep all their stock. When you raise, those vesting provisions are reset, as will be required by investors. The vesting is typically 4 years. In some circumstances, where the founders have been working for a few years and achieved a bit more than an idea, 1 year may be given in credit to vest. The investors are investing in you, the founders, so they don't want you disappearing. However, if you are removed without cause, you may get accelerated vesting of your shares. Restricted stock. This is common stock that is issued either to early employees or top executives that are hired into the company fairly early in your startup life. Restricted stock will have vesting provisions that are identical to standard employee option plans, typically 4 years, but sometimes 3 years. The difference between restricted stock and options is that the employee owns the shares from the day of issuance and can get capital gains treatment on the sale of the stock if it's held for 1 year or more, again depending on your country. But issuing restricted stock to an employee triggers immediate taxable income to the recipient, so it can be very expensive to the recipient, and therefore it's only done early when the stock is not worth very much, or when Mr. Moneybag Senior Executive gets hired in and he can afford the tax issues. Restricted stock units, or RSUs. These securities are relatively new in startup land. They were created to fix the issues with both options and restricted stock and have characteristics of each. An RSU is a promise to issue common stock once the vesting provisions have been met. The vesting provisions can include a liquidity event, but not always. So when you are getting an RSU, you're getting something that looks like an option, but there's no strike price. When you get the shares, you will own them outright. RSUs are more common for larger companies, and options are more common for startups. RSUs are difficult in a startup or early stage company because when the RSUs vest, the value of the shares might be significant, and tax will be owed on the receipt of those shares. This is not a bad result when the company has sufficient capital to help the employees to make the tax payments, or the company is public and has put in place a program for selling shares to pay the taxes. But for cash-strapped private startups like you, neither of these are a possibility. So this is the reason most startups use stock options, not RSUs or stock bonuses or stock awards. At Groupon, senior staff on the path to IPO were issued RSUs. That is, if they weren't allegedly fired just before the IPO, so certain people could get to own more shares, allegedly. Options. This is by far the most common form of employee equity issued in startup companies. The stock option is a right issued to employees to purchase common stock at a point in the future at a set price. The set price is called the strike price, as we discussed in the ABCs of ESOP's video. Options are the only type of stock we are going to talk about in this course generally.